for DCSLA's SLA annual recap. I want to thank Drexel University for hosting us in this beautiful space. I'm sorry for those of you on the webinar who don't get to see it, need our food. And thanks to our sponsor, Safari. And they have pamphlets, handouts out near the entrance, so if you please grab some on your way out afterwards. So I want to get started. And if everyone on the line, if anyone can't hear well who's on the line, please send a chat message and let us know. So we have a nice slate here. I'm not going to go through it all since you guys can read it, but I want to thank our presenters, Ann Caputo, Sharon Levius, Svari Kaiser, Chris Vestal, and Richard Huffine, and of course our president-elect candidates, who I'm going to tell you a little bit about, but you can read their bios online on the SLA website. So Jim Del Rosso will be going first, and he has served as both a division and chapter leader, including as the Academic Division's Communication and Social Media Chair and the president of the New York chapter. He currently serves as the Digital Projects Coordinator at the Cornell University's Hospitality, Labor, and Management Library, as well as of Cornell University's library's current group of Digital Scholarship Fellows. And Tom Rink has held several leadership positions in SLA, including President of the Oklahoma Chapter and Division Cabinet Chair on the SLA Board of Directors. He was recently awarded the Karen J. Swift Leadership Award by the Leadership and Management Division. Tom currently serves as an instructor for library services at Northeastern State University in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He is the resource coordinator for the College of Liberal Arts as well as for the College of Science and Health Professions on the Broken Arrow campus, where he provides reference services and information literacy instruction. And so we'll get started. And Jim? And just to let everyone know who's online, some people have slides and some don't. So if you aren't seeing any advancement, it's probably because there are no slides. Can I move to that one? I was trying to just move to the next one. Can I not click on that? No, maybe this way. Sorry, there it is. Okay, there we go.
Thank you for that introduction. I do want to offer one clarification. I was president and am currently past president of the upstate New York SLA chapter.
I'm sorry.
A little different, and I'm going down to New York in a month. I don't want there to be any misunderstandings. I just want to have that be clear. So I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and I want to thank the DC chapter for inviting Tom and me to speak with you this evening. I've been asked to talk about both my impressions of the annual conference at Vancouver and my vision for SLA. Now, to me, the most amazing part of the SLA conference in Vancouver was getting the opportunity to speak with so many SLA members from all over the world, from so many different divisions and chapters, from so many different information professions. We spoke at receptions, we spoke in open meetings, we spoke between sessions, at trivia night, at the military division breakfasts, which were amazing. Seriously, they were very, very good. And I even tried to talk to some of you at karaoke night and the IT dance party, but that was oddly difficult. Now, I love these conversations, be they with past board members or first-timers or just the rank-and-file folks who come to our conference any and every year that they can. I love these conversations because each one always gives me a bigger picture, a broader perspective on SLA. I came into my candidacy with the conviction that our association needs to move forward together, and the annual conference really helped bring that into focus for me. Now, some of you, well, actually, probably, I don't think it got posted yet. So some of you are going to see a version of the story I'm about to tell on your blog because it relates back into my personal theme. But when I was in college, my grandfather, the original Jim Del Rosso, for whom I'm named, he would send me these notes in the mail, and usually with a little bit of cash. He would never, for whatever reason, he would never tell my parents about the money. He would always tell them that he was sending me stamps, which confused them and made them even angrier than I never wrote. But almost all of these notes that I received were just these very simple, heartfelt words of encouragement. And the most common of those words were move forward. And that was usually how we would end our phone calls too, move forward. When we'd be talking in person and I'd be telling him about what I was working on in school or what my plans were for the future, that is what he would tell me. Move forward. Move forward. Now, my grandfather passed, and the notes that he sent me became keepsakes for me. And the words always stayed with me. To me, move forward means accomplishing something with each day, each month, each year, even if it wasn't what you originally set out to do. It means not succumbing to complacency, to nostalgia, or to fear of failure. It means doing your best to see things how they are, not how they were or how you wish they would be. And it means taking steps to make those things better. Moving forward means leaving things better off than how you found them and doing right by those around you. What move forward means for SLA is recognizing the challenges and the opportunities that we currently face and focusing our energy on meeting the needs of our members. It doesn't mean ignoring the past. It means moving forward. Moving forward means honestly acknowledging what has come before and taking steps to progress ourselves beyond it. Moving forward doesn't imply an obsession with the future either at the expense of the present. We need to know where we're standing before we can take a step. We need to move forward to engage the challenges of our profession as a whole, not just as individuals. We can no longer rely on merely training our members to fight harder for ever smaller pieces of an ever-shrinking pie. We have to grow our profession. So I have a question. It's live interaction. Has anyone in this room added or helped to add an information professional position to your organization in the last 3 years? Anybody? A couple folks. I wish there were more hands. I think one thing that we need to do is get the folks who have achieved this and get them up and talking about what they've done in webinars and so forth. Let the rest of us know what steps they took so that all of us can find ways to start bringing more information professionals into our own organization and then tell them we learned how to do it at SLA. We need to move forward, on a related note, we need to move forward past the question of our relevance as a profession. I say this because whenever I look at user surveys or whenever I talk to my peers, including at the annual conference, what comes through again and again, consistently, is that our relevance is never questioned by those we work for and work with on a daily basis. Never by those whose lives we impact and change. Be they students, faculty, lawyers, doctors, business people, citizens, paralegals. I was just down at the Department of Justice today and the Department of Labor. They all know our value. They never doubt it. They never question it, and neither should we. Unfortunately, all too often, the people who recognize our value are not the same folks who are controlling our funding. So my vision of SLA is an organization that continues to teach our members how to turn our supporters into our advocates for our funders. We also need to move forward and acknowledge the challenges that new information professionals face and look to make changes so that they can keep up their SLA memberships in their first years after leaving school and keep attending our conferences during the most crucial time of their careers. Those first few years look very different now than they did 10 years ago. So we need to recognize that and look for ways to offer more support. We also need to move forward and listen to our members about questions of cost and recognize that there is a difference between being unwilling to invest in oneself and being unable to afford rising prices during tough economic times. We cannot price members out of our organization. We certainly cannot price future leaders out of our organization. This was my priority when I altered my chapter's reimbursement policies for the leaders that came after me, and it's still a priority for me today. We must also move forward as an organization that embraces our conference code of conduct, knowing that no anti-harassment policy has ever stifled discourse and engagement even the smallest fraction as much as harassment at conferences does. We need to move forward as an SLA that knows its one true purpose is to support its members, to advocate for them and for their interests, whose actions are taken in the spirit and practice of transparency, and whose leaders listen to members even when the message is very tough to hear. We need to move forward knowing that we will never again be the SLA of 2006, but that if we move forward together, we can make sure that the SLA of 2016 is even better, and the SLA of 2026 is something amazing to behold. So I think we've gotten about to the part where I'm supposed to ask you to vote for me. Now, before you laugh, I've had people make it very clear to me that I should end every conversation that I have with a member by sealing the deal. But the thing is, I'm not here to sell myself. I'm not a product. Neither are any of you. You're people, you're librarians, you're information professionals, and this means that you are powerful, and you are what make SLA great. So regardless of who you choose to vote for in any of the offices that are up for election, please vote in September. Because the more engaged you are with SLA, the stronger SLA will be. I've shared with you my vision of SLA. So if you do share that vision with me, then I will humbly ask that you consider giving me your vote for the office of President-elect. But I will challenge you, all of us here, all of you listening now or listening later on the webinar, to step up, to step forward, and to work with me and the other members of the other future members of the board to continue to make sure the Special Libraries Association moves forward. Thank you.
All righty. Well, my name is Tom Rink, and I am next up here. Let's see if I can get to the slides. I'm not used to this Mac. Okay. Well, good evening. I'm so glad to see so many of you here in person, as well as the number of you online attending this webinar. And it's now my turn to give my vision for SLA, and what a hard act to follow. Jim, that was very well spoken. But I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to each and every one of you, both in person as well as those on the webinar, so that I can talk about my vision, but not just mine. Like Jim said, it is our vision for SLA for the future. I've been involved in SLA since the mid-1990s. I can remember the days of the 12,000 members when the conferences were huge. The business partners threw lavish parties. They were phenomenal. But again, times have changed. This is no longer our reality. That's not saying it's a bad thing. Yes, more is always better in general, but we do have a committed core of people, and we need to keep those committed people engaged, and so forth and so on. So my main vision for SLA is sustainability. I think we want to sustain SLA. SLA has existed for more than 100 years now. I'd like them to exist for another 100 and beyond. SLA is family. It's my family to me. I'm sure many of the rest of you feel as though it's a family as well. I get no more greater satisfaction than going to conference to meet new people, meet old friends, make new friends. It's all about the connections we're making, and it's all very valuable. Now, sustainability, I have 5 bullet points here. Obviously, financial is a big part of it, but it's not the only piece. There are several factors that have to go into play if you want to maintain your sustainable organization. And so you can read these. I'm not going to go over each and every one of these. But as if you were in conference, you saw it, but if you weren't at the closing session, John DiGilio spoke about how our expenses, John DiGilio is the treasurer, he was speaking about how our expenses have been exceeding our revenues for several years. Well, I looked at his chart. 7 of the last 10 years, expenses exceeded revenue. This is not good. Revenue needs to increase. So, but that's just only one piece of it. If you don't have the money, there's so many things you cannot do. And the conference actually accounts for 50% of our revenues. Your membership dues are a little bit less than 30% of the revenue that SLA generates. So something's got to give. If the conference is shrinking, the members that attend aren't going, that's less revenue. To succeed as an organization, to be sustainable, you need more than just to be successful with your conference. The conference has to bring in the money that funds the rest of the programs throughout the rest of the year. So having a successful conference goes beyond just paying the bills of conference. You have to get enough revenue generated to fund the programs that you're going to be putting on for the rest of the year. Membership. This is a member organization. We are member driven. SLA wouldn't exist if it weren't for us. We need each and every one of us. We need to all be going out and recruiting other people. We need to retain who we have. We need to get new people, new industries, new professionals, not necessarily librarians, but information professionals, the IT people, whoever we share a common bond with regards to information and information management. Again, the annual conference, are we at the right size? Are we still trying to run a conference like we have 12,000 members? Do we need to downsize it a little bit? And do we need to start thinking really seriously about, logistically, our conference is just a nightmare. It's huge. It's complicated. So many sessions that go concurrently here and there. So again, you have to evaluate all that. Staff has shrunk. They're in the late 90s, early 2000s, they had 28 staff members. They're down to 12. We have all these member benefits and services, but if you don't have the staff to carry them out or to implement them, then those member benefits and services are going to be impacted as well by the fact that there's fewer staff who are stretched very thin to do all this work for us as our association staff. So again, these are all tie in with the sustainability, but these services and benefits, they are what provide the value to the membership. So we have to get back to where we find and provide the value, and we have to continue providing that value so that we can get new members in or get old members or existing members to keep renewing their dues because it's so valuable to them that they don't want to quit. They have to keep going. So it's all about sustainability. We're in a vicious cycle. Membership has been shrinking. Back in 2010 is the latest data I had from the membership database. We had over 10,000 members. We're currently at 8,000. And if you chart it out each month, it's sad. It went down about 20%, a little over 20% of our membership has dropped since 2010. Again, when members are down, their dues revenue is down. Dues revenue is down, that hurts the bottom line with SLA's financials, as well as if there's fewer members, only a small percentage of the members actually attend conference, so that means conference revenues are going to be down. It's all kind of a cascading trickle-down effect that we've got to stop. We need to reverse this trend, so we need to find a way either to re-enliven the value to where people are seeing the value SLA provides so that they can join, renew their memberships, attend the conference. Yes, it's expensive, and we have to find ways to keep the costs under control as well. But again, 8,000 members, maybe it's just the time to downsize the conference. Something has to give. The revenue model just isn't working. You can't go year after year with shrinking revenues and not have it suffer for the association. Again, now the sale of the building, that should help bolster some of this, but again, in the big picture, that's not a fix. That's just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. So until we figure out this revenue problem, selling the building will be great. It'll get us out of the red briefly, but then how many years before we're back where we are now if we don't do something to fix this now? I've served on the finance committee for a couple of years now, and it has opened my eyes to the whole world of what we need in regards to just the fact that there's the revenues, the expenses, how much things cost, how complicated the whole financial picture is for SLA. I just never realized that before. So we need to fix the cycle, and it's all trending downward, so if we could reverse that trend, that would all be good. Next, another thing besides the sustainability is I believe in continuity. And I was really encouraged to see that Kate Arnold announced at the annual conference this year that the new value proposition, their strategic priorities for 2015 and 2016 include the value of the information professional, the value of SLA, as well as the value of the member experience. I think these are very wonderful because providing value is key. Because if you're providing the right value, then it's something that people want to be a part of. But equally important to just providing the value to the members, we need to be demonstrating that value to the employers so that they support the members by attending conference or by giving them time off to attend programs or to come to sessions like this and things like that. So I believe it's very important. So continuity also means that you have uninterrupted connection or succession or a union. And so I believe we have this long history of presidents having their presidential theme for the year. Well, I'm going to go back to Cindy Romaine. Hers was Future Ready. From hers, we went to Brent Mine. It was Future Now, Operation Agility. And then it went to Deb Hunt, who is all about transforming and knowing the expertise, transforming the knowledge and expertise of your individual strategic value. And then Kate Arnold, obviously, is Beyond Borders, how to integrate more with the international community, make it more inclusive, make SLA a lot more inclusive beyond just the North America crowd. And then now Jill Strand, her conference theme is Be Revolutionary, and she explained it to me as that there's tough issues, there are no easy answers, but we have to be open to anything and everything. We have to look for the new ideas because the current model is broken. We need to find a way to fix that. Another issue that seems to be a concern to still many people is the whole transparency issue. And this has gotten a lot better over the last few years than it has been in the past. I'm not saying it's perfect yet. There's always room to grow with transparency. But great strides have already been made. And as you see from this list on the slide, so many items are already now being posted to the website, the board agendas and minutes and summaries and financial summaries and reports. But again, we have to find new ways to keep the membership informed, especially of the important issues that the association is facing, because we're in this together. And so if the members aren't informed about what's going on, that just leads to friction. And you want your members to understand what's going on. You want your members to be able to help to provide the ideas or the impetus or the new fresh perspective that we're needing to help keep this thing moving forward. Again, more opportunities for member dialogue is always a good thing. Now, I do believe we have a really strong foundation. SLA has all the pieces in place it needs to be successful. It has the unit structures. There's chapters, divisions, caucuses, sections, all that kind of stuff. We have a strong board of directors. There's governance. There's the SLA staff. Even though it's shrunk, they are still working very hard for us as members. There's committees and advisory councils. All of this stuff is the basis or the foundation for a successful association. You need all of these pieces. They all need to be working together. In addition, but to move us forward or to get us out of, I don't want to use the word rut, but I just did. we need to find a new creative way of doing this. Numerous tools and reports have been given to us in the past over several years. You know, they've done surveys, they've done reports. There's the membership survey that we just recently finished. James Manasco has been assigned the task of chairing a task force to look into the data collected from that membership survey and see what sense can be made from it about what needs to be done. The Conference Re-envisioning Task Force just completed their report. A lot of data is involved or is incorporated into that task force report that can also be mined for the nuggets that what it might take to turn our conference around, to bring back the value, to make it more robust and an even better conference than it already is. It's a great conference, don't get me wrong, but it can be better, and there's things that need to be done to change to help make it perhaps a better conference. That you'll be hearing from Ann here shortly about the competencies for the information professional in the 21st century. Another document that has been updated and made more realistic to the current environment in the information industry. Alternative Revenues Task Force. This is one that is near and dear to my heart, serving on the Finance Committee. Granted, I wasn't on this particular task force, but it is imperative that SLA find other revenue streams or other ways of raising the revenue so that we can continue to be sustainable. The Financial Times research report, again, talked about our common value, understanding who are the drivers, managing the process, things like that. Then we also have the Alignment Project, the Loyalty Project. All of these things are the tools that we can use. We just need to dig deeper into the research that's already been done to help create and keep us sustainable. And that basically is the end. Again, like Jim said, it's important that everyone vote. The election will be in September. Again, all our information is on the SLA website, our bios, how we've responded to questions, so forth and so on. Feel free to come up to us and ask us questions anytime during the evening, or email me, Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I have a blog. I have a web page. Feel free to contact me any way you can get a hold of me, and I'll be more than happy to dialogue or discuss with you, and I thank you for your attention. I use the down arrow.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, let me scoot behind you.
Hi, DCSLA.
Hello.
Beloved home chapter. I'm Ann Caputo, and I've been on the SLA Competencies Task Force for the last 2.5 years, and we delivered our Part 1 report to the SLA board in June, and it was accepted. So I want to briefly walk you through what that's about and give you a chance to ask questions if you have any and tell you what's coming up in the future. First of all, since I'm an academic sometimes too, what is a core competency and how many of you know they exist, have used them, wished for a newer document than the 2003 document, or have any other idea that they are out there at all? Yes, all right. Then my task is easy. Just in case you don't look at them every day or refer to them every day, they have 3 primary components. First of all, what we might call professional competencies, things that might be written into your job descriptions or in your cover letters when you are applying for a job, or components of your elevator talk, or parts of your annual reports and so on. So professional competencies that are either unique to us or certainly focused on us and our capabilities. And then, because we think you need to know how to apply these core competencies, there are applied scenarios. So here's the competency, here's how you would apply it, here's how you would use it. And in the past, also personal competencies that transcend our profession specifically. People in other professions might find they resonate with them as well. And they are competencies that we might try to attain but not always attain, or things that we can strive to reach forward for. So in the 2003 document, which is the current official document, we had 4 component parts, which you can all read, and this is actually part of a much larger, longer presentation, so I'm going to zip through this quickly. And we have merged those into 3, changed them around, and the biggest change is a vastly expanded personal competencies section, because we believe that we move into a world where we may be functioning by ourselves, we may be embedded, we may be in alternate tracks, but we remain true to our professional needs and requirements. So that's the part that has changed the most. Here's what a competency sort of typically looks like. A1 aligns information organization with and is supportive of strategic decisions of the professional organization, blah, blah, blah. And below it, how you apply this, how you might take that competency and create a strategic or business plan that supports the host organization's goals, and so on. So that's sort of the format and tenor of this. So what has changed, besides the introduction of kale into our diet? What is it with kale? I don't get it. I don't even. Please, I think we've actually.
I have a friend who's big on nutrition. He says kale is king.
I love kale. My mom fries it, and she just.
I don't want to wander off into the kale world because I think kale is now being replaced by cauliflower or something else. But nonetheless, I honestly don't get it. Okay, so changes that we focused on and how we did it. What special librarians and organizational information professionals actually do? Where do they do that? And that is probably the section that has changed and is changing most dramatically. How do they do that? Ever evolving also, and the value proposition they bring to the organization so that they remain viable, visible, hireable, retainable, promotable,
and so on. We looked at the Financial Times SLA report, which I hope is tattooed on the inner forearm of all your arms at this point, or at least you know how to find it, and it is cited at the end of this report. The 2008 Outsell report, we looked to have leaders and other kind of professional practitioners give us feedback. You were one, this chapter was one of the arenas where we gave you the draft and said, please comment on this, tell us what you think, and boy, did you ever. It's good. And competencies documents from other associations. ALA and the other LALAs all have, most of them have competencies documents, although I will say SLA was the first, or certainly among the first to have them. So that was our sort of background and what we did. And here are some of our top conclusions. Collaboration is the word of our future. We need to build relationships based on our unique knowledge proposition. David Schumacher, who's written the Embedded Librarian's Bible, if you like, also cited at the end of this, waxes eloquent on this, providing decision support, how you become strategically important in your organizations, how you analyze. When I talk to library school students, I just talked to the Tennessee group last week, and others as well, they almost always say, you know, what will I be doing 5 years from now or 10 years from now or into the far future? And one thing we can say with almost certainty is that you will be doing analysis, you will be doing synthesis, you will be doing recommendations, offering conclusions, be part of the team that moves forward rather than simply providing data or information. You will be involved in developing data management and analytics skills, extracting meaning and context out of large pieces of data. Big data is on a lot of speakers' agendas. You hear a lot of talk about it. We should be in the big data world, but I would posit that we don't understand it very well, but we need to be there. And then we need to help shape the questions that will move us forward. And where will we do it? Probably, increasingly at least, in a decentralized environment. No longer the corridor with the mahogany door, reference desk at the end, wealth of printed materials, etc. That is not very, very viable future option for us. So we will be decentralized, we will be embedded, we will be distributing our functions and our knowledge in the way that we are particularly well suited to do. We will be integrated, and we will be involved, hopefully, in the strategic direction of our organizations, because that is how we maintain our central focus in our future. How will we do it? We will be involved in the creation of, design of, and population of data dashboards. We will know a lot more about infographics. One of the points that we are at in the competencies task force is how do we take this 9 or 10 page document that we created and make it more usable in an infographic way, in a visual way, in an interactive way, in a way that continues to grow. We will and should be involved in executive and decision briefings, and we will be involved in using multiple technologies. So what about those personal competencies? I don't have enough time to talk about them in great length, but this presentation, and I'm happy to share it with Chris, who can share it with you if you like, has about 10 or 12 different attributes that include things like being able to prioritize and focus on what is critical, help that our organizations do that based on our expertise. We need to be entrepreneurial and innovative. We need to be adaptable and flexible. We need to seek out challenges, prepare for and capitalize and recognize opportunities. We need to be active listeners and problem solvers with effective communication skills. We need to negotiate confidently and persuasively. We need to develop active partnerships and alliances, building an environment of mutual respect, interpersonal skills that influence and employ a team approach, and take calculated risks. We need to become lifelong learners. We need to balance work, family, and community. Small ripple of reaction there. And celebrate achievements for ourselves and others on our teams. We need to have the realization that very few jobs, if any, are bulletproof. We need to contribute to the value, which is our bottom line performance metric, and we need to be positive and a high impact team contributor. So zipping along the bottom line, our skills continue to be highly valuable. No one in the information world has that unique combination of knowledge, capability, and presence that we do. We need to require them to be more proactive, if not entrepreneurial, and approach our work environment in that way. Here are the resources that we would recommend that you use. And before I'm moved off the stage, on your chairs, unrelated to all of this, is a little flyer about a project, the Labuto Library project, that is seeking some assistance in bringing a Zambian graduate student to the U.S. to become trained to become a future leader in the Labuto Library project in Zambia. And we are looking for sustenance and funds. Jane Kinney Myers is here. I'm happy to talk to you, I'm sure, as am I. I'm on their board. So if you wonder what that is in your chair, that's an appeal to help us bring someone here to go through graduate school and become a future Zambian library leader. Thanks very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you in the listening world. I really appreciate the time to have this opportunity, and I want to talk about a competency, how to run a meeting or how not to run a meeting. That's what we said, because...
Is this not your...
Isn't it?
Maybe you want to get one to use. This is the...
Final. That's it.
Is that...
Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry for that pregnant pause, as they say. This is about how not to run a meeting, and the full title was How Not to Run a Meeting, Facilitation Skills 101 for Librarians, Why Facilitation Matters, and he says a comedy of errors. Our presenter, Mr. Dave Pollard, is a native of Canada, Vancouver, and he made a wonderful presentation for us, and I want to talk to you about the different things that we found on those particular things. Pictures that we have of SLA in Vancouver, and that's over the door as you walk in. And these are some icons of Vancouver, the very special Olympic flame area, and what I call, and I'm not sure if the people in Vancouver call it, but I call it the Lego Orca. But that's one of the things that we saw when we walked in the building. Here are some military libraries members gathered to go on a thank you sponsor tour of the Info Expo, and all of these members that you see are members of the DC chapter, so that's the good news. Now I'm going to talk about how not to run a meeting, the facilitation skills for librarians. And one of the things, when we were talking to Dave Pollard about what we wanted something that was practical, something that we noticed that librarians sometimes don't always have the ability to do that on a regular and confident way of conducting business. And Dave put this special scenario together for us, and you can read more about that in the slides. Now I'd like to go ahead and talk about what we did. We think that the room layout was a major part of our success in this particular program. We had 5 microphones up there in front. We had 5 people who were wonderful. We didn't even give them a script ahead of time, but they got up there and read the script with vim and vigor, and we had arguments. We had the IT director, we had the librarian, we had the library director, we had the CEO, and all these people up there, and they were making comments as the skit went along. One of the things you'll notice here are the tables.
we had round tables of between 8 and 10 people. We had about 75, maybe up to 90 people in that particular session. And what was very good about this is the fact that when you have round tables, people are more able and willing to talk to each other. And that was part of, I think, the success of this particular program. One of the things that I would like to point out is that Dave Pollard had scripts written for librarians. He had really talked to librarians and had really worked to get this together. So our 5 stars, and you know what? They got away without me getting their name. I just can't believe it. I'm sure that they're bound for Hollywood or someplace like that right now. But one of the things that we use is a special deck of cards that Dave has developed. And what we did is we put these cards all over the tables. Everybody could choose after the skits, that is. After the skit, everybody chose 2 or 3 cards that felt like something they wanted to improve on, something they were good at, so on and so forth. And so what they did is they looked at them and then they talked among themselves at the table. And this was the most talking I've seen at an SLA conference in quite a long time of the members. And I think it's the way the room was set up and the way that Dave had topics for people that they could associate with libraries or information professionals or anybody who wants to be successful in collaboration. And that was one of his big themes. So I urge you to think about when you're setting up a conference, think about what the room should look like. And I think this was very much a success for us. And I hope that other people can duplicate this kind of success, and maybe we'll do something else again. We never know. And then I have some wonderful photos. This is in front of the Olympic flame where it's lit up at night. And we were out shopping, of course. Then this one is, I don't know if you can see this as well as I can see it here. There are people riding along on their bicycles on that yellow road right in front. And out in the water, you can see the seaplanes. A lot of seaplanes are just sleeping out there. And that big bright light way out there in the water is a gas station, a floating gas station. So we really enjoyed our time in Vancouver, a livable city, a city definitely we'd like to go back and visit, and maybe in a few years, maybe 15 or 20, SLA might be back in Vancouver. I want to say one other thing. See you in Boston in 2015. Be revolutionary, revolutionary, revolutionary. And I'm making a plug for the Military Libraries Division. We're going to have a special save the date thing. We're going to have a training workshop here in the Washington, D.C. area, December 6th through the 9th, 2015 in Arlington, Virginia. And we hope you all can join us. And it doesn't have to be just military libraries, even though it says Military Libraries Training Workshop. We would welcome others to attend. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them right now. Any questions? No? I have those cards there if you'd like to look at them, and I think they're definitely worth a gander. Thank you. Yes?
What's the focus of the training workshop? What kind of training in what?
It's called Military Libraries Training Workshop, and we don't have the theme yet.
Oh.
But it's going to be leadership. It's going to be leadership, marketing, and military resources, I think. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. As we flip the switch here for the next presentation, I'm so happy to follow Anne because she talked a lot about what competitive intelligence professionals actually do already, which is synthesize information, move from gathering information to analysis and presentation, looking at the presentation for what you are trying to achieve, and actually presenting things not always in PowerPoint mode, which in fact was a theme for the session that I actually moderated in Vancouver. So let me give you just a session overview of tonight's session, which is what we were prepared to ask. I'm going to cover what attendees asked, because in this session we didn't use any PowerPoints at all. It was all conversation. What we learned from that session, and I want to cover finally what we want to and expect from our presentations in Boston in 2015. So the first issue is the theme of the conference was Beyond Borders. We had a session called Borderless CI, and what borderless competitive intelligence means for information professionals could be quite different. You could be in a global organization and looking at working in many countries. You could be looking at what your organization does and want to get into other countries around the world, which the majority of the people in the room were looking to do. And the third thing was looking at crossing borders, meaning that you're not so siloed looking at competitive intelligence in just one division or one product line, but looking at synergies going across those borders. So we looked at all of those kinds of things, and we tried to create a session that was going to be emblematic for us. And so we looked at global. And the first thing, we had done a series of webinars. We've done 2 already. We'll have 3 more this year. We have been doing the state and state-of-the-art of competitive intelligence in emerging markets. So we've covered Brazil and Latin America. We've covered India and that region. We're now looking, the third one is going to be South Africa and the rest of Africa. And in fact, Africa and Asia and Latin America were the 3 areas asked about most from the audience. So we had a lot of participation. We had 5 individuals from around the world who agreed to come to Vancouver at no expense for SLA. You know, we're not a rich organization, so we did get some people to come. And people who have had projects in competitive intelligence in areas around the world that we were not familiar with. One of the issues that we had is how to balance the consultant with the practitioner with the academic. And in fact, you know, a few academics were able to come because their universities paid. A few consultants came thinking, well, maybe this is an opportunity for them. We didn't have as many practitioners as we might have wanted, but we had 5 really good representatives, and you can read about them. The SLA website has their bios as well. So we did have some challenges in doing that, but again, no PowerPoints. So how are we going to encourage members to participate? And the way we did this was to post on LinkedIn and listservs for both the Competitive Intelligence Division and the Business and Finance Division. These were divisions that supported this session and sponsored it. So we looked at that. It was very interesting because I've done this before with other groups, and people responded to me. They sent me emails. They didn't comment on the blog. They didn't put it out. I put it out on Twitter. It was a hashtag Borderless CI session, and very few people posted to that. So that was, it's something that we might want to think about how we're working, and are we working the way the rest of the world is working? But so we looked at that, and we encouraged participation. We prepared some questions. I had 20 questions prepared. The people on the panel had gone through them so that they sort of had some idea of what was going to be asked, and they could be prepared for that. But we had microphones in the room, and the good news is that audience participation was good. We didn't have to revert to many of the questions. We just kicked it off. But the key takeaways from the session were, 1, how do you trust local resources? The believability factor was very people in the room were very skeptical. How do you understand? How do you get that? And by and large, the people in the room on the panel were talking about partnering with locals, because they know the culture, they know what's to be trusted and what's not to be trusted. How to work well with local entities was a big issue. So if you're using primary researchers to gather information for you, how do you work with them? And particularly one of the questions dealt with the ethics. What is legal and ethical in other countries may not be your practice in your organization because it's not legal or ethical in your country or for your organization. So balancing that out and having to think in those kinds of terms, countries were at different stages of development in terms of competitive intelligence, so they may think of it as more marketing, they may think of it as more general stuff, and we had to really focus in on that. The training that was available, the education that was available in some of those countries was not existent. Again, thinking about the opportunities for SLA and broadening the scope of our webinars so that we can bring people in to those webinars who may not be members but may possibly be members in the future. So we looked at that, and we looked further at moving from collecting the information to adoption of formal advanced analytic techniques and competitive intelligence tools and technologies. But quite frankly, in my humble opinion, those in the room did not take advantage of the expertise that was on the panel, because the questions that were asked were very telling of what they needed to know, but it was very basic. Tell me how to deal with my management. Tell me the best resources to use. Tell me how to deal with licensing issues when I have a conflict. And I can get into the specific of those. But I think the more important thing is what it tells us is that there's a lot of opportunity for the competitive intelligence group moving forward. There's a lot of interest in competitive intelligence, but maybe it's not so global, and maybe we need to do some basic work among our members. So let me see, I think that we've done that. We had some other sessions in Vancouver, and I can tell you that, of course, our networking party is always the best. So it was at the Fish House at Stanley Park, and you don't know if anybody's been there. So in closing, I just want to talk a little bit about something. Information Outlook had a special conference issue. Any of you pick it up and read it? Yeah? Do you have any remarks about it? Anything that struck you in it? Okay, so here's my takeaway from it. There was an article there about careers and how to find a new job, and it was done by a very good HR professional, clearly knows her work, but it was for general. It was, looking at the website and then looking at what's available on the web is not doing research about a prospective employer. So I'm thinking about 2015, and I think that Stephen does a really good job with Information Outlook and bringing expertise from the outside to us throughout the year. But there are some times that we have to say we're not writing enough for ourselves, because there's a lot more to be said about how you get a job than just what everybody else does. So let me invite you to the CI monthly webinars. They continue. So take a look for that. We have an active listserv and LinkedIn group, and we too are looking forward to Boston in 2015. And with that, we have another speaker.
We have a couple of questions from the
Oh.
web folks.
Oh, sure. Questions. So I'll repeat the questions.
Yeah, BRICS C is China. What happened? S is South Africa. What happened? You should say selected BRICS.
Okay. No, we haven't done all of them yet. We've done Brazil and let me see. We did Brazil and India. South Africa is next. China is the following, and the last one is going to be Russia. So, and then maybe we move on to the next set, which would be Mexico, Korea. Yeah, let's see. There are a couple more in there, so we have to take a look at that.
There's another international question. It doesn't have to do with this session,
Right.
but has the SLA board made any serious attempt to reach, collaborate, or partner with the SLA Asian chapter?
Yes, in fact, so I do a lot of work with the Asian chapter as well. I work with the International Information Exchange Caucus. So we work with the Asian group quite heavily. We've got some things planned on the schedule for 2015. I just saw the conference planner, so I know, those sessions are at work, and they're quite an active group. Anything else? Nope. Okay. So without further ado, who's next?
So I've got a potpourri of things to cover tonight, and I kind of wrote to the organizers and said I can cover any of the following. They said, "Great, I covered all." so which is fine. I hope you've already heard a lot about some people's take on the tenor and the structure of the conference. The Beyond Borders theme, I think, really permeated our activities and the time that we were there. It started at the very opening of the conference with an elder from one of Canada's First Nations welcoming us to Canada and doing a special opening prayer and chant and bringing us to a space in Canada that's, I think, very special to the First Nations people. The border, the water, the life that is brought from a very cold environment sometimes of the year. So his name was Elder Shane Point, and he did an amazing job, I think, of opening our hearts and our minds to what being on land that has been part of their life for thousands of years. So it was a great start, and it opened up to John Wilbanks, which was a really challenging and interesting keynote speaker for the opening general session. His take on Beyond Borders is different from what I've heard so far tonight, and but it started the conference for me very well, because he said, think about the fact that a border means an intersection. It doesn't mean a division. It means that there is a connection there, and that we need to explore it. And his slides, which are on SlideShare, and you can find, there are about 100 of them, and he didn't take a long time to go through them necessarily, but he took us through a pathway of thinking about information today and how our relationship with it is changing. He made it extremely personal, because he started with his DNA and what he has been able to do in the scientific community with his own DNA footprint, with his own information, and sharing it with science and communities to do research, and how big data is still very personal data at times. So I'd encourage you, if you get a chance, to go out to the SlideShare and check out his slides. I think that he was the right tone and message to start us off in the conference, and he works for Sage Bionetworks. He's very much a forward thinker about the way I think we're going to work with information moving forward in the future. The next piece I wanted to talk about was the one I got a chance to present in, and Matthew Von Hindi, who's here tonight, organized 3 different sessions for the conference. So Matthew is an independent information professional, part of our community here in the DC chapter, but brought his interest in talking about what's going on in our community together. And we had mine was on open access publishing. For those of you who don't know, there's a real shakeup in scholarship that people are being encouraged, especially by the funders of major science, to make sure that the outputs that they produce, that the public funded, can be publicly used. So my interest came from 15 years in the federal government and making the move to the commercial side of the fence. but realizing that the dream that we hope to have from government information, from all the stuff the government funds, is still yet to be attained. There was someone from the UK Research Council there. They're farther ahead than the US in this pursuit. There were also folks from the Royal Society of Chemistry and the American Chemical Society, two not so open organizations that are realizing that their opportunities are going to be open. It resonated with me what Barbie was saying, though, that the audience didn't really take advantage of the expertise on the stage. Their questions ranged from very basic to very personal, and I think it's a good message for all of us as we go forward sometimes in these conferences to look for that opportunity to get what's being brought to it. There are a lot of people that are on that stage or involved in this issue, or these issues, have a lot more to bring than we necessarily call on them for. So, but it was a very good session. It was very interesting. I know that the communities that sponsored it really enjoyed the conversation, and I can tell you, my company, ProQuest, is very interested in seeing where open access is going and what their role is going to be in it. I think, the fact is, the world is moving underneath all of our feet, not just yours as a librarian, but under the feet of the providers, of the supporters of the library community, of the people that sell you content as well. So the next piece was the annual business meeting, and this is one of those, if you care about SLA, I encourage you to get on the governance email list and listen to what the board is telling us. I came off the SLA board of directors in December of 2013, and I got off the leadership list, which means I went from getting 18 emails a day to getting no email. So the governance list does provide you a lifeline to what's going on in SLA's governance process, and I encourage you to be a part of it. The annual business meeting presented information to the membership from the treasurer, from the executive director or CEO, and from the president. And it was great to hear Kate's vision and what she's experienced in this Beyond Borders experience in the first, I think, non-North American president that we've had, at least in modern times, ever. No. So, but definitely not the last, I'm convinced. I think, there's no question that in our world today, we can find leadership and be led by people worldwide, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that means for our association. There was a distinct lack of information in that session, I'm going to be honest with you, and I think that it comes from a lack of clarity about what the association needs to hear, is ready to hear, and we can talk about in open community without necessarily opening the books to anybody who wants to see it. So, there have been a lot of comments about it. I'm a little concerned about it, but I can tell you that each of those people gave their vision and their understanding of where we are. And I know Tom has spoken tonight about the situation that we face. I'm focused, as I think everyone is, on moving forward and on making sure that the actions we take tomorrow are about building our future, and not questioning our present, our past. So, but then there was the closing general session, and if you thought you were going to a regular conference and you're comfortable, this made you uncomfortable. It was really a good thing to have. I almost wish it weren't at the end. But we had 4 TED-style talks. And if you don't know what a TED-style talk is, go to YouTube and search for TED Talk. They will make you cry. They will make you laugh. They will definitely make you think. And these were 4 sessions, 4 very quick moments in SLA that made us think. It started with Brandy King, who is an information professional that I've admired since she joined our profession, and I really think is just a great individual and a great researcher. She's always sharing what she's seeing and learning. She's on Twitter, she's on the blog, but she was talking about how can we really have it all? And in her mind, especially as information professionals, our lives are about information. They're about the information we share in personal relationships, about what we do for our work, about what we do in our community. And she says we can have it all if we define what all of it is for us. So, and she did a great TED-style talk. She really thought about the process and the structure. The next one was it was interesting. It was Tracy Malley's husband. So, and Tracy is one of those amazing dynamic people in our legal division, and she's got to come from an amazing dynamic family for her to be able to prosper in her own life, and she truly does. Her husband is a trainer and a coach, and he was talking about how those skills apply in our world today, and how we are trainers and coaches in the way people approach information. So sometimes we're about giving, sometimes we're about providing, but a lot of times we're about helping them through what they're uncomfortable with. So that's where we get uncomfortable. The next one actually wasn't too bad. It was Heather Penauer, who started a project called Impact Story. And she's truly questioning the foundations of what, where I'm going, Jim. Wait for everybody to catch up. Heather started this thing called Impact Story, and she's really questioning impact scores for academics, and if there are alt metrics and other ways to look at the impact that research can have on what people know and the way they learn. And I applaud her. She started a nonprofit. She's raising money. She's raising questions. And she's actually doing some great stuff with data that's freely available that no one's applying in this way. And she talked about how to be scrappy, and that I get that and loved it. But then we had Sarah Glassmeyer, who started out with a curse word, but then she kept using it, and it became a part of her fiber of being, and we had to, I think, as an audience of 2,000 people, accept that this was her reality, and I got there. I don't know that everybody else got there, but she is breaking the way we have to think about the way we work with people, and the way we look for perspective that pushes us forward. So at the end of it, I wasn't so much shocked as I was, happy that she's part of our community and bringing this capability. It was wild. It's like I thought, I was on the ride, and we're here at the end of the conference. This is almost done. We're almost getting ready to go home, and all of a sudden, we got one more dip and turn, which I thought was excellent. And she's going on and talking a lot, I think, in other realms about how we work together, and I believe Tracy Malley is the one who pulled all these people together and gave us this closing session. She did a great job, and I had a great SLA conference. I know that we all worried about what we were going to get because it was in Canada. So many of our colleagues couldn't go or weren't going to go, and everybody who went got something out of it. I hope that you'll do everything you can to be in Boston next year and to join us in Philadelphia the next year. This is something that I do for myself. I obviously do for my employer. We have a good little, give and take, but I do want you to go, and I want you to get as much out of it as you can. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be talking about Mary Ellen Bates' information alchemy, but give it just a second for the slides to come up. What I really liked most about the session is she opened it up by relating it to the Financial Times survey and some of the conclusions that they found from that there really is a disconnect between the value we as information professionals think that we bring to the table and the value that our stakeholders, our C-suite executives think that we bring to the table. And the main disconnect was really there were 5 areas of disconnect, but the first 3 of the 5 were really things that were totally under our control. So it kind of led Mary Ellen Bates to get on a bit of a soapbox, and it was a very good soapbox to get on. I'm not ragging on her at all. So this is obviously part of a much longer presentation. All of her slides are available online at her website. So we think that we add value. Executives don't think we add quite as much value as what we bring to the table, and that really affects us. I mean, that affects our budgets and whether or not we keep our jobs. Top 5 pain points: information overload, filtering through retrieved info, relevancy of info. And these are all things as information professionals, as the gatherers of information, that we have direct control over. So it's not good when we see these 3 things up here as their pain points. So the rest of her presentation really focused on ways that we could alleviate these pain points, and she actually gave some really helpful practical tools that she was using Google in ways I had never thought to use. So it was a really good presentation. And the thing that if you take nothing else away from this, we need insight, not just data. If you hand a 130-page document to an executive, they're not going to read it. They're not going to get any of the information that they need to get to make those action-ready decisions. What they need is clarity and insight. You need to do, I'm not saying not to give them 130 pages, but maybe an infographic or an executive summary at the top that kind of distills the information that you found for them. Let's see. Here's a link, or here's more information about the Financial Times survey. There's a link to it right up here. One of the things that we like to say that we do for people, or that Mary Ellen Bates says that we like to say that we do for people, is save them time, and executives could care less about that. They have people that manage their time for them. They don't need people to manage their time for them. So it's better if we talk about reducing risk and helping them make better decisions, because that's really what resonates with them. And then the knowledge workers, the analysts, the people that are doing research to help those C-suite professionals, they want better information and they want better answers. And then the sales staff interns, they want to learn how to do this research. They want to learn how to get that information quicker, how to get those results faster. So it's less of getting them that information, it's leading them to the water, teaching them how to do that for themselves. One of the things that she said is to ask for complaints. And don't ask for complaints once a year. Don't do a one-time survey. Ask every time you finish a project, every time you hand a deliverable over, because that's when it's fresh in their mind. That's when they're really PO'd, if they're PO'd. And you want to hear their complaints, because if they don't give them to you, they're just going to write you off, and you have no way to course correct without those complaints. Let's see, finding the data to mine. She went over a lot of different websites, and I also gave a 60 government websites in 60 minutes talk that is available on the Government Info Pro website. So those are some good sources as well to look at. One of the things she talked about, though, is that, I work for LexisNexis. I work for a database provider. Richard works for ProQuest. It's nice when your answers are there for you. Sometimes you're going to get really weird questions where the answers are not there in commercial databases. And Mary Ellen Bates, says self-employed, says, I like getting paid. I don't like telling people I can't answer their question. So when you can't find things in your usual suspects, be ready to build your own data. So one thing she talked about is using Google Autocomplete, and this had never occurred to me ever. You can use this to see what lots of people are thinking. What are people really searching for? You can monitor your own organization's reputation, your competitor's reputation. You can find out how to respond to things. You can also see, like the iPhone, you can use Autocomplete in the iPhone to find a list of iPhone competitors. So the one example she has on here is using the subject that you want to research is, and Cargill is evil. Is generally considered is a bad company, is the largest. It may not actually be evil, but these are the things that lots of other people, the top things that people are typing into Google. That is insight. Another cool trick she showed is if you want to see what their competitors are, instead of using is in there, do versus. So I was doing iPhone versus, and I got a list of Samsung. I was doing Lexus versus, and I got an interesting list there too. So just these cool little tricks with Google that I had never considered, and being ready to think out of the box. Google Trends, so frequency of search queries over time. And you can actually narrow this by a country or a local area. And you can also use reference points for this. So the URL for it is just googles.com trends. So one question she had is, how has people's use of the word energy changed over time? And she couldn't find it in her usual suspects. So she went here to Google Trends, and she's seeing Google searches in 2014. She also did a search for this in 2007 and saw some of the differences. And then she hand-built a chart herself. And this is what she sent them. She didn't just take a screenshot of those two different things. She distilled the information for them. 2014, Duke Energy up, solar energy, energy drink down, to let them know quickly what those changes were over time. Data mining SEC docs, this is really cool. I hadn't heard of this before. WordAnalytics.com calculates fog score, sentiment filing risk, litigiousness, and then it actually gives you sentiment scores on here on a nice little line chart. And then creating visibly valuable results. So like I said before, you don't want to send them 130 pages. They're not going to read it. She said this was one of the scariest things that she had to do when she first started working self-employed. But she had to keep in mind, I guess the second thing to take away from this, if nothing else, is we remember 10% of what we hear, 65% of what we read, and 80% of what we see. And I guarantee you I'm going to walk out of that room in 5 minutes and completely forget what those stats are. And I think most of you will too. But if we have an infographic like this, oh, people really don't remember spoken info that much. Oh, but they do remember the visual info. So it's a much better way, it's a much more engaging way of presenting that information. Tell a story. So one of the things she did is, you're not operating in a vacuum. We are the research experts. Don't be afraid to share your insights that you found when you were doing the research. It was hard to find information about this particular company. Or when I was doing research, I stumbled across this information for you, and she distills it in a nice little PowerPoint slide instead of the 130-page report. She was really scared that people were going to be like, this isn't enough. She's not doing research. They loved it, and they threw even more money at her for coming up with a distilled story like this. pull out what's noteworthy. So in here she's doing the social media strategy of Pampers. You can see that she's just taking screenshots, strategy, company website. So it's their company website versus their Facebook versus their Twitter feed. Again, just making it really concise and really engaging to look at. Don't be afraid to do a timeline. So she actually talked about the turducken, which is my favorite meat. And you can see first mention of it in Google in 1979. And Joe Madden introduces turducken to the NFL, which is really when he came to exist, back in 2001. So we just see this over time, and it's much easier to look at than bullet points or text itself. Now, I did disagree with her here. She is on the board of directors of a charity, and they put her in charge of doing the financial information here. And I don't think I'm saying anything bad. She described it as a foo-foo organization. So people don't like raw data, and she was a librarian, so they gave it to her, and she crafted the spreadsheet, which I love. I love spreadsheets. I was like, this is perfect. What do you mean you're going to change this? Her colleagues on the board did not like it. They said this is too much for them. So she's like, what are you talking about? So after hours of going back and forth with herself, she gave them this, which I'm like, no. But they loved this. They loved that it was engaging, that it was easy to see. Goal, actual. Goal, actual. Made it much easier, simpler for them to see. Some basic tricks. She went over tricks using PowerPoint, using Word, and using Excel. So you can customize the entire slide layout by customizing the master slide design. And there's some screenshots for this. Excel. I love creating charts with Excel. So just remember, this is the one takeaway for this. Your rows are your x-axis because they go across, and the columns because they go up and down are your y-axis. Let's just show some examples of that. Chart responsibility. When you're doing a chart, remember to kiss it. Keep it simple, silly. I'll use that one instead of the other letter. Don't do 3D. That confuses people. And then what do you want to show when you're doing a chart? So think of change over time. Columns are better for ranking parts of a whole, maybe a pie chart for that kind of thing. Word, you can create a table of contents and create navigable hyperlinks within the document itself, making it really easy to people just to jump down to the sections that would be of interest to them or that you really want them to see. So basically she shows how you highlight it here, and then you go into this menu here to actually create that hyperlink itself. Be brave, try new stuff. So there's her contact information. And again, I pulled all these slides from batesinfo.com, and she actually has a new book out, The Reluctant Entrepreneur. I picked up an autographed copy of that at the conference, and it's really good. So I would encourage everyone else to read that as well. And that's everything that I have.
Thank you, everyone. It is 8 o'clock now, so if anyone needs to leave, feel free, whatever. But if you guys don't mind sticking around for a little bit and answering any questions, I know there are questions from the webinar participants. So I think we probably need to be near the mic, though, for people to hear answers.
Yeah, if the two president candidates could come up, there's a question for them. This is a synthesis of a couple of questions, but basically, very briefly, what is your vision in a nutshell for SLA, and specifically, how does that relate to the looking at the name change possibility again?
Want me to go first?
If you'd like.
This is Tom. My vision in a nutshell is sustainability. If we don't sustain, we won't exist. Name change, dead horse. Let's not beat that one.
This is Jim. My vision in a nutshell is moving forward. We couldn't even get consensus last year that people wanted to talk about this again, and I think we should acknowledge that and not talk about this again.
That's all for the candidates.
Okay.
Wait, does anyone else here have, since they're up there, does anyone else here have questions for the candidate? Anyone? No? Okay.
More shy.
Is Sharon still here?
Yes.
Yes, okay. You had a question about that room arrangement, and they were at tables, weren't there always people who had their back to the front?
Hi, it's Sharon Lenius, and I'm talking about the room, the tables that we had. And one of the things that we did is when we first started, we had the skits where they were up there standing there talking to at the microphone. And we had enough space that we could turn around and still have space on the table where they could write. And I didn't think that was a particular problem. I know the room was big enough, it was spacious enough, and it didn't seem to present any problems, and nobody seemed to have any problems with it as far as I could see. I really recommend something like that for rooms and for, depends on your program. That's all I can say. Situational, they say. Thank you.
I guess for either of the candidates or anybody else who has inside information about SLA finances, they want to know how much they're in the red, what really is the membership, and what has happened to fiscal transparency. I have a question.
Well, since I serve on the Finance Committee, this is Tom Rink, I will attempt to answer that. I don't know what's public, and I don't know what I can share, but I know that the revenues have been lower than the expenses for the last several years. I believe John DiGilio put out a chart at the annual conference, and it didn't have the actual numbers, but it had a column, or the left-hand side showed the amount. It didn't have the specific numbers, but I do know that we did have to take out a $350,000 loan last year just to meet expenses. I know we've been in the red for several years in a row. I don't know the exact amount again. I don't know that I can share that, but I do know that we can. The loan amount is public, I believe. So it's the hole keeps getting deeper, though, which is why the whole sale of the building thing came up. We have to stop the bleeding somehow. I believe in that. It's not looked at as a golden bullet necessarily, but it will allow us to get our feet back underneath ourselves and put some money back into reserves and do things like that. But that was only part of the question. What was the rest of the question?
Fiscal transparency.
We're working on that. I mean, all the John DiGilio is all the Treasury's reports are online now. Or they at every annual conference they put the Treasury's report out there. I'm not sure again what I can share, but we are working on some initiatives to make the financial information a lot more transparent, a lot more readily available. I think I can share this, but we're looking at resurrecting an annual report, some sort of annual report for the association that would include more financial, a little bit of everything, so more of a glimpse as to here's how the association is doing and here's what's going on. Yes.
Tom, this is Sharon Lenius. I believe that at the business meeting he showed where the lines would come as a balanced budget, and that's what they were projecting for 2015.
We projected a balanced budget. We actually, when we sat down and did the budget last year, we had a balanced budget with about a $3,000 surplus. Of course, last year we thought we had a balanced budget as well, and we ended up because conference did not perform as well, we didn't get more than just meeting expenses because we rely on the conference for a major source of revenue for programs throughout the year. So breaking even at conference really doesn't break even though you have a balanced budget. So the same thing possibly could happen this year. It's too early to tell. All the final numbers from conference haven't come in yet. But again, we've had 7 out of the last 10 years where revenues did not exceed expenses, and that's just the wrong direction to be going with revenue. Does that answer your question?
Did you want to comment?
Oh, I was just gonna, if it's up.
Well, just to follow up, and I think you addressed it partly, by selling the building, the headquarters building, what is that going to pay for? Is it going to contribute to the reserve fund, go towards operation expenses, or pay bank debts?
Well, it's going to do all of the above. It's first of all, it has to sell. It's been on the market, and these things take time. It's not a small something that you're trying to sell on eBay. It's a major deal, a multi-million-dollar sale. Again, first thing that'll have to do is after it sells is they will have to pay back debt. Then again, create another reserve. Put most of it, the bulk of it, in reserve, and use only that which can be justified. If they can make a good case for spending it, or they have to come up with specific policies on how to spend and when to spend and all that. I believe they're working on but because the building's going to take a while to sell, they didn't have to have something in place right away. But no, it's not going to be just put into the operational accounts. It's going to be in reserve to be used for specific purposes that are justified and with proper justification, I guess is the best word to say. So.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, specifically speaking to the fiscal transparency, is a lot of the information that I got when I was looking into this and trying to find out more information about the situation with debt and the line of credit, et cetera, came out of the discussions at the building. And I do think that we need to really continue to take steps forward to make sure that any member who wants that kind of information has an easier time finding it. And I also think that it's very important as decisions are being made about what's going to be potentially be done with the money from the building sale, and they have said it's going to pay off the line of credit, it's going to pay off the outstanding debt, et cetera, and talked about reserves. I'm glad that we seem to already be looking into what we're going to be doing with the money in excess of that, but I think that needs to be a very transparent process as well, and I'm glad that there have been, I think James Monasco's committee is going to speak to that to some extent, and I hope that that process is very transparent. I think it needs to be, so that people feel comfortable more generally, not just with what's being done with the building sale, but also just, again, with the state of the finances of the association.
That's pretty much it from the webinar, but we've got to thank you for answering the questions. Other questions here from the audience? Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Diane M. Falk, hello. Is there a clear list of the debts, the categories and specific debts? And here's an impossible, outrageous question. Why would it not be viable, if needed, that SLA become a division of ALA? I've really always wondered that. And there's some other questions, but those two.
First one's back over to the finance.
I'll answer the list of the debt, right? Okay, the question was there a specific list of the debt? And then the second part of the question was the viability of SLA becoming a section of ALA. I'll speak to the debt part. There's the $350,000 loan that we took out last year just to meet operating expenses at the end of the year due to poor performance on the part of the revenues from the conference. That's the only debt as of right now, but then again, when you look at the last several years where revenues don't outshine expenses, then that's just a little bit more in the hole. I'm not sure what I have liberty to share, but those numbers are we know what those numbers are, and perhaps with more transparency that will all become available at a later time. But as of right now, the only thing I know I can share is the $350 on the margin loan that they took out to meet expenses last year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question back here.
Yes, I know I went to the SLA conference in Vancouver. We spent a lot of time in the business meeting talking about the debt situation. Personally, I don't think that debt is necessarily a bad thing. If we spend the money on investment for the future of SLA, even if we temporarily go into debt, but we have a brighter future and you have a better return for that investment. So my question is, what is your vision on turn the debt into investment strategy to turn, to look at the future and so that we will have a better return for the money we spent on the debt in the past?
Okay, I'm not sure if everyone heard that question, but it has to deal with the debt and how to turn the debt into an investment, because debt's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to build from it and make it work to your advantage. The problem with the debt, as I see it right now, and it ties into our whole revenue model, is the debt's there, but revenue still is being outpaced by expenses, which means we don't have the ability to even start working on paying back the debt. I mean, it's one of those slippery slopes that we have this debt and we have no way to pay it back yet because the revenues aren't outpacing expenses. So until we do something to fix the revenue stream or the revenue model, find an alternative source of funding, which the Alternatives Revenue Task Force looked into a bunch of different things, selling the building was one of those pieces that they explored. So that's one piece, and that's going to be maybe the quick fix to get out from under all of this. But we still have a serious problem that if we can't find another way to raise revenue besides dues and annual conference, then the model's broken. We need to have a different stream of revenue or find something, or something drastic has to change. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I am absolutely not opposed to taking debt as needed if there is a solid investment that you're putting that towards. I mean, I have a mortgage. That's what it is. But that's not what's happening here right now. Right now it's just as Tom said, the revenues are not keeping up with our expenses. So that's something that's a much less healthy kind of debt. And I don't think we can really start talking about even exploring the possibility of the other kind until that problem is fixed, until, as Tom says, we have a setup where our revenues are exceeding our expenses again, and then we can start to look at, oh, well, if there is something out there that does exceed what we currently have going on, maybe we'll do that, but that's not where we're at. We can't really do that.
Question from the webinar folks. What about vendor contributions? What should
What if
They're down.
But they're really good to get. Right?
you can't rely on them.
Well, yeah, it's
The economy is still tough, and so difficult decisions have to be made. Money doesn't grow on trees. Everyone doesn't have deep pockets like they used to have. Difficult decisions are being made when it comes to vendor sponsors or business partner sponsors.
But that also is not a good model for an association to rely on vendors.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
There has to be another.
that's all part of the annual conference revenue stream thing. It's
And I also think one thing that's come up a number of times that we do need to re-explore is the possibility of allowing vendors to sponsor programming even if they're not necessarily setting up a booth. It's a controversial topic, but I think we absolutely need to take a look at it because we need to make sure. I think the assumption is, oh, well, if they don't set up a booth, if they have the option to not set up a booth, then they're going to just do that because it's cheaper, and so they'll keep setting up the booth. I think we really do need to acknowledge the possibility that they just won't do anything at all. And with the programming setup that we have at the conference, we need to make sure that the divisions can get the money necessary to put together the programming that we depend on. So it's definitely something else to take a look at. But yeah, looking at vendor contributions as a major or primary part of our budget is just, it's not going to be something that's going to be sustainable.
Since it's getting kind of late, I think we can cut it off there. And people here are welcome to discuss, and I'm sure you guys, I'm sure Jim and Tom would love to receive tons of emails from everyone asking them questions. But thank you all for attending, and